Welcome to the Pint Glass Football Podcast.
Pint Glass Football. I'm your host, Brad Fowler. What's up, PGF Nation? The Freefall continues for one of the biggest brands in the NFL and one of the biggest brands in college football. The Lions stomped the Packers. The Bills still own the Dolphins. We got NFL Week 9 reactions. Oregon stomps Michigan. Penn State comes up light again. We got a lot to get to today, but joining me, of course, my co-host, Alex Higdon. Alex, what is going on?
Brad, yeah, there's a lot that we need to talk about. I mean, even if we felt like even getting a little bit deeper, there's a quarterback issue that I think the NFL has, and it's their fault, or rather the coaching fault. So there's a lot to get to here.
Let's start with some NFL Week 9, and I want to start with the Philadelphia Eagles, Alex. The Eagles are now 6-2, but they were up 22-0 in the third quarter and almost blew this game versus really, quite frankly, a bad Jaguars team. This Eagles roster, look, I still think it could be one of the 5 best rosters in the NFL. Saquon Barkley has been huge for this team. He's been a much bigger addition than I thought he would be. Their rookie corners, Mitchell and DeJean, these guys are playing lights out. But because I said all these nice things about Philly, I don't trust this team, and it really starts with the head coach because I don't trust Sirianni. What is with him going for 2 every time? I mean, what are they doing here? What is he trying to do here? Is it like an analytics thing and not kicking field goals? This could have been really costly. If the Jags come back and win this game, and they almost did, fans would be freaking out over this decision to continually go for 2 and continue to pass on field goals and put points on the board. Yelling at fans last week, this guy just seems like a joke of a head coach. And look, they're going to make the playoffs, but I don't trust them once they get there. I think they'll get beat by a smart, well-coached team, something that this team, quite frankly, isn't.
I looked at this team and I said it to some friends of ours. I said, this Eagles team does not look better than last year's team. It looks the same. It looks the same to me. I mean, okay, you have a little bit more of a dynamic running back. However, if you make it to the playoffs, and that's a big if, perhaps, let's just say you do make it to the playoffs, I think you're still one and done. This team does not look like a team that took a step back from where they were last year. They look like the same team. They're bumbling things, like you said, in the second half. They don't look dominant at any point in time, or if they do, they look dominant perhaps for a half or maybe a quarter or so, but they don't look the way that I'm sure that they expected to look, or at least how I think that they thought they were going to look with Saquon Barkley there. Have a more explosive running game, but I think this is the same team from last year, and if they make the playoffs, they'll be one and done.
In the division, of course, the Dallas Cowboys, look, at some point, we're going to have to start talking about what their draft pick is going to look like, Alex, because this team is in a straight free fall right now. They've lost their 3rd straight. The wheels are coming off for this team. False starts, a bunch of penalties, really sloppy football. They struggled on 3rd and 4th down. And look, Dak is having the worst year of his career so far. Now, I know he got hurt in this game, but he was bad before he got hurt. And this is right after he signed that big 4-year, $240 million extension that made him the highest paid player in NFL history. Look, if you're going to pay Dak like an elite quarterback, and that's what they decided to do, then he has to elevate the team around him. And once again, he's showing that he cannot do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, he has a CeeDee Lamb. Jake Ferguson is very serviceable, but we know what the problem is here. The problem is they refuse to sign Derrick Henry in the offseason. I was screaming, once they decided to pass on Derrick Henry, okay, fine. But I was screaming to bring in Kareem Hunt, to bring in both Kareem Hunt as well as Dalvin Cook. One of those guys I felt would have been able to be serviceable along with Rico Dowdle while you brought him along, and then perhaps you cut one somewhere mid-season like around now. But they refuse to, and instead they go and sign burnt out Ezekiel Elliott. He is no longer the running back that he was even in a comparable role when it was Tony Pollard and he there. It's not looking well. They messed this up themselves. When Jerry Jones said all in, no Cowboy fan thought that this is what all in was going to look like. And I have to say it again to all the people that were talking about all signing all three of these guys, meaning CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, perhaps in the offseason, and then they've already signed Dak Prescott. You have now tied yourself to what this team is. You cannot complain if you were on board trying to resign, attempting to resign all three of these guys. Now, they still have some room because perhaps they can trade Micah Parsons, but that probably would have been like one guy that I more than likely would have kept and maybe let CeeDee Lamb walk. And if you wanted to keep Dak, then keep Dak, or figure out which one of the two of the three or the one of the three you want to keep. I think they completely bumbled this, even though they've been smart in drafting in the previous 4 to 5 years with the son taking Will McClain taking over, but they have completely bumbled their window to actually stay relevant. And I think they're going to be heading into some dark times in the next 3 years.
Yeah, and look, we're taking the victory lap on this one, Alex, because we were talking about this all offseason, how this was a bad offseason for Dallas. We both talked about how they didn't have the guts to not pay Dak and to actually hit the reset button. And I know it's a tough thing to do. And I know Dak was coming off of a good year, but the contract situation, the money situation to what you're talking about is why you couldn't pay these guys. And Dak was one of the guys that I said, look, he's a good quarterback, but he's not top quarterback level worthy as far as the money goes. He just isn't. He's never played like a top 5 quarterback. Why are you paying him like a top 5 quarterback? That's one of the worst decisions you can do in this league, is pay a guy top dollar when they're not worth it, because now you have limited resources to put a team around him, and it's starting to show already way quicker than I think most Cowboys fans thought, and it's going to get worse before it gets better in Dallas. Cardinals, Bears, of course, Caleb Williams, Kyler Murray, 2 former number 1 overall picks. Cardinals crushed the Bears in this game, and I thought this game might be closer than it was. This was a little bit surprising to see them get demolished like this. Now, I think the Bears are still a couple years away from actually being done with this rebuild, so to speak. I think they've made some nice moves to improve, but this O-line for Chicago is starting to regress, and it's starting to look bad. I mean, way too much pressure in this game. It looked like every time I looked up, Caleb Williams was under pressure, especially the last 2 weeks. Stories are coming out about the locker room starting to turn on this coaching staff. I was surprised when they brought Eberflus back last year. I thought they were going to make a change. I thought it was the time to do it. I thought drafting a young quarterback, it would have been the right time to draft a young offensive-minded guy to pair with this QB, not a defensive coordinator that really hasn't proven himself as a head coach. And look, on the other side, Arizona, I think, has really figured out the identity of this football team, and it's to run the ball. They need to be a run-first team, and they're starting to do that. They're starting to play a different style of football than we've seen there in years past, consistently running and just taking pressure off of Kyler Murray and letting him be a guy that can, move the sticks occasionally on third down, but taking that pressure off of him because we know he doesn't win consistently from the pocket. So run the ball, let him make a play here and there when you need to throw. But I'm impressed with the direction I've seen from this team, and I'm really not impressed with this O-line in Chicago. I think they've got to make some serious changes to this roster and this coaching staff in the offseason.
3 things. One, as we're recording, Brad, I can let you know that Tampa Bay just got down to the 1-yard line with 30 seconds to go to tie the game up. 2, I'm going to take I'm going to take a half lap. I'm going to walk around this lap because I told all of you that Arizona was going to be the surprise team this year, and they certainly are. And then 3, Chicago, I completely agree with you. I thought Ryan Poles, but he absolutely missed with not moving off of this head coach and going in a different direction offensively. The other thing was, as much as I love Roma Dunzier, they only have 4 picks in this draft. I more than likely probably would have opted to go in a different direction because this draft was thick with receivers. I probably more than likely would have traded the pick and perhaps gotten a lot more back for it and been able to go through the draft and find one of the other younger receivers to pair along with Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, as well as Cole Kmet, or maybe even as well as some offensive linemen, in which it was deep, as the Buccaneers have just tied it up. So I'm not sure what direction Ryan Poles. He obviously has some leeway because they have seemed to have found their quarterback, but he is now once again going to have to address that offensive line, even though he addressed it the year before, getting Donnell Washington out of Tennessee and then bringing in some free agents. But he's going to have to address it again either in the draft with players, or if he's comfortable and thinking he has the players, addressing it with a new offensive line coach.
Yeah, I think your point about the draft is interesting because I really loved Rome Odunze too. We both did, and I understand wanting to get your young quarterback a playmaker or another playmaker on the outside. But to your point, there was so many good tackles in this draft, especially where they were selecting. They would have had a choice at one of the better tackles in this class, certainly. That might have been the right move. Looking back now and seeing how much pressure this guy's under, how many hits he's taken. Look, nobody wants to see their young franchise quarterback getting hit as much as Caleb is right now. So, yeah, looking back, that probably would have been the smarter move. Now, speaking of offensive lines, we know the Lions have the best one in the game right now. And, man, it was on full display in Green Bay. They absolutely destroyed the Packers. This was a beatdown. I've said it for the last couple of weeks. This is the best team in the NFL. No disrespect to the Chiefs, but this team is so good. I think KC, look, they've got the trophies. They're the current dynasty. I get that. But this team's more complete right now. They made a good Packers team with a pretty good defense look really average and quite frankly looked like they don't belong on the same field with them. Jared Goff has been so lights out. And now, look, historically, he really hasn't been very good in bad weather, but he was sharp again in this game. And on the other side, Jordan Love, look, really good young quarterback, but I said this a couple weeks ago, he can be reckless with the football. And it's the one part of his game that I think he really needs to clean up because he makes some really bad turnovers at times and really some bad decisions in key moments. I think he's going to have to clean that up if they're going to take the next step.
Yeah, I can completely agree on Jordan Love. I mean, I'll start there first. I thought that it was 24-14, but however, I actually thought it should have been closer than it was, even though they just kind of ran the ball down their throat and used it. But they also, to Green Bay's credit, you can say what we want to say about Aiden Hutchinson. The Green Bay Packers were actually on fire running the game, and I thought they should have run the ball a little bit more. I mean, Josh Jacobs had 13 carries for 95 yards. That's 7 yards a clip. They should have been more active running the ball. They threw the ball 39 times, ran the ball 23 times for 138 yards at 6 yards a clip. That tells me you should have been running the ball more a little bit and slowing this game down. Now, I do know that Detroit ran off 17 straight points in the second quarter, so you perhaps panicked a little bit and tried to get, but Jordan Love does have the propensity to basically turn into Brett Favre, and what I mean by that is just be a gunslinger. There were some key drops by Christian Watson and lack of effort from my perspective on Christian Watson doing a few things. But nonetheless, Detroit did what they did. They did win the game. And once again, as I said, the previous 2 weeks, they're keeping Jared Goff 25 attempts and under and running more than they're passing. This is what they need to do. This is their DNA. They should continue this formula, and I think we should see another deep run by the Detroit Lions into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think a lot of people laughed, when Dan Campbell took over and he had the press conference about biting kneecaps and all that stuff. I think people kind of laughed and thought it was kind of funny. But look, I got to give him credit, though, because he was putting it together right from the beginning that, look, we're going to be a different style of Detroit team than we've seen in years past. He came in, has developed a culture and an identity for this team. And you're right. I think Smash Mouth is the way to put it because they are. They want to beat you up. They've got a big physical offensive line. They play tough defense. They're hard hitting. They play fast. Like, there's really nothing I don't like about this team. There's not a lot of holes on this team. The offense is about as complete as it gets. The defense is coming around. And I just think they're such a well put together team right now. And to your point, they're playing kind of an old school brand of football, running the ball to set up the pass. But man, they are tough to stop and they are rolling right now. AFC East battle came down to the wire. Pretty good football game. Miami and the Buffalo Bills. Look, Tua was really good in this game. This team, though, is clearly not the same without Tua. I mean, that much is clear. But as well as Tua has played when he's healthy, the key is that he's not healthy enough. And this guy got paid. And just like we talked about with Dak Prescott a little bit ago, when you're going to pay a guy like that, the expectations are different now. He's got to stay healthy, and he's got to win these types of games versus the best teams in your division. These are the ones that really matter. These are the ones that the big paid franchise quarterbacks have to win, and he just doesn't. He doesn't win these games. And look, as good as Tua is, the gap between him and Josh Allen, I think, is huge. But he's getting paid like a top guy, and he's not a top guy. He's a top 10 to 15 guy. He's getting paid like a top 5 guy. And this is exactly what I talked about with Dak. GMs have to stop paying these quarterbacks like they're top guys just because of the market. Everyone's like, well, that's what the market is. I don't care what the market is. Somebody has to push back on this and say, look, you're a good quarterback. We're going to give you a good deal, but we've got to stop paying everybody more money than the actual elite quarterbacks in this league. Josh Allen, this guy absolutely owns the Dolphins, and he's playing some of the best football of his career right now. This was a big win for them. They continue to roll. This win would have been huge for the Dolphins to kind of keep them in the race. But it was a great game, but it's just kind of the same old story with these teams.
Yeah, I'll start with the Dolphins because I can't believe that Tua is out there. From my CEO hat, I would have done whatever I need to do to keep him off of this field. Nonetheless, he did start 25 of 28. He looks, I think, when Tua, similar to what some people feel about Brock Purdy, they look more like top 10 quarterbacks with the coaches that they have. I'm not sure they are the same when they're not with the same quarterback and with the weapons that each of them have. But let's just talk about Tua's weapons and Jalen Waddle, that running back room, I'll just call it the room, and then, arguably the best wide receiver in the league in Tyreek Hill. So I have to give Tua his kudos there in that sense. I am completely wrong on them, not necessarily because Tua got hurt, but because I didn't expect their defense to be as bad as it was. Now on to the Bills. Josh Allen did look like an MVP candidate last year, but I do have pushback, and it's not against Josh Allen. It's more against the coaching staff, because this was a tight game. It's not like they were down or anything like that. They threw the ball 39 times and only ran the ball 19 times. And they ran it for 19 times, 94 yards, and 5 yards a clip. In a close game like this tells me you had the opportunity to run the ball more and probably play a little bit more with the clock and play a more balanced offense to where you wouldn't even been in this tight of a game. That's what I'm really looking at. Again, not against Josh Allen, but not more against the Buffalo coaching staff not running a more balanced attack against this team. And one thing that I will say, and I've said it before, I see that Amari Cooper was out this game. Keep an eye on that. I told you guys he is a good regular season wide receiver, but when you're going to get into big games, he's either not going to be there or he's not going to show up. And just a quick recap, they have started overtime and the Chiefs have the ball.
Yeah, getting this recorded in the middle of Monday Night Football, not ideal, but obviously we got to get this out for you guys. Let's keep an eye on the LA Rams. And I said in the offseason, I said that this could be a sneaky good team. Now, they've dealt with a ton of injuries, and I think that's really why they started out the gate so slow. They're starting to get healthy now, and how about that throw, Alex, by Stafford in overtime to beat Seattle? Wow, what an absolute dime. That was an unbelievable play. This guy is still playing at a high level, and I think sometimes we forget just how talented he is, and then he makes plays in moments like that, and you go, okay, I remember why Matthew Stafford is considered one of these top guys, because, man, he can still spin it with the best. On the other side, though, Geno Smith is officially holding back what I think is a pretty good roster in Seattle. This team has a lot of talent, and they're not getting where they should be because of the quarterback position. They should have taken a quarterback last April. And we talked about it in the offseason. We thought that should have been the move. They should have gotten aggressive, move some draft capital, do whatever it took to target the guy they liked and go after it. I'll be absolutely shocked if they don't take one next April.
Yeah, and I know they did go and get Sam Howell, who I think there may be something there, at least a mid-level person that can hold the driver's seat until they find the guy that they want. I thought that Sam Howell looked good last year, but that's that. But what I will say is the Rams didn't win this game. Seattle lost this game, and I'll tell you why. Seattle and the coaching staff got very conservative when they had the ball and had the opportunity to go for it. They ran the ball. They downshifted instead of getting aggressive. You were a 4-4 team. You are trying to figure out what you have. You should have been aggressive in trying to win the game because you're in the middle of everything. It's not like the Cardinals are going to run away with this. They're only 5-4. Right. So they should have been more aggressive to try and win this game as opposed to taking their time and methodically going down the field with runs as opposed to throwing the ball and getting aggressive. I know he threw 3 interceptions, but so what? Get aggressive and try to win the game. You're not set up for this because it took the Rams 4 plays to go down the field with no problem. 4 plays, 1 run, 3 passes, touchdown. And you were not prepared to go into a game. Your team was not prepared to go into overtime against Sean McVay at all. You should have been more aggressive. But shout out to Jackson Smith and Jigba. It looks like they've finally got their trio in terms of DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, who they did re-sign, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. They look like they have their 3 wide receivers. And like you said, if you get a quarterback back there, that's a guy that's going to have a lot of weapons. And let's not forget about Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet.
Yeah, that's kind of my point, I think, with Seattle, though, right? Is like they've got weapons. They've got defensive players. Like they've got a lot of pieces in place here. This team should be better than it is. And I think to your point about being aggressive, I just think the coaching staff at that point had to be kind of scared to put the ball in Geno's hands. He was so bad in this game, made so many just errant throws. They were probably being conservative just at a fault because they don't trust Geno Smith. And if you don't trust your quarterback, look, it's time to move on. And I think they're going to. Did you know that Pint Glass Football is more than just this podcast? We have an exclusive newsletter. Sign up for free at pintglassfootball.com to receive articles and insights delivered straight to your inbox. But wait, there's more. We're excited to announce our brand new YouTube channel. Not only can you listen to our podcast on YouTube, but you'll also find exclusive video content waiting for you. So hit the pause button right now and go subscribe to our newsletter and hit that subscribe button on YouTube to stay connected with the latest football news and our exclusive content. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. We personally love the pick'em game. Just pick between 2 and 5 players to build a pick'em entry. Pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total in this week's game for a chance to win big. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Download the Underdog Fantasy app and sign up today with promo code PGF. That's promo code PGF to claim your special pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. The official ticketing app of Pint Glass Football is now SeatGeek. I can't recommend them enough, guys. I've been using SeatGeek for years. You want to go to a game this season? SeatGeek is here to take the confusion out of buying tickets, making sure you get the best seats at the best prices. With SeatGeek, you'll never have to worry about overpaying for tickets again. How? They put a 0 to 10 score on each ticket, so you know you're getting a good deal. But here's the real game changer. You can get $20 off your first ticket purchase with the code PGFPOD. That's right, $20 off with code PGFPOD. This season, make every game day epic with SeatGeek. Download the SeatGeek app and remember to enter the code PGFPOD to grab your $20 discount. You mentioned it last week. We briefly talked about the Chargers, and this has been one of the surprise teams of the league right now. You talked about their lack of weapons. If they get a big-time wide receiver in this draft, and we know how that position has been the last 4 or 5 years, it's absolutely loaded. You can hit on one in the first, second, third round. Heck, even in the fourth round, we're seeing guys that are making a big-time impact. Watch out for this team if they hit on one, because Herbert was lights out in this game. I think he has really benefited from this coaching staff and having some real stability. especially in this game. My gosh, on 3rd and 4th down, he was almost perfect. Now, they've already matched their win total from last year. The defense has been really good. Their top 2 rookies look like home runs with Alt and McConkey. I think we talked about it last week, and I'm just bringing it up again because they got another big win here, and they're ahead of schedule. This team is a couple players away here from really starting this rebuild and looking like a team that could maybe make some noise.
Yeah, and it pains me to say this, but yes, they are on point. And once again, if people got in your fantasy leagues, if they got quiet and some people decide to drop Quentin Johnston, pick him right back up, because I think he had a little bit of a spell in terms of an injury and he wasn't as explosive, but he looks like he may be back to health, and pick him up if he's out there and available. And shout out to J.K. Dobbins. He was a guy that I did not think was going to be able to last the whole season, which is one of the reasons I drafted Gus Edwards. Slapped me in the face one time. But he looks like he's holding up and being a steady running back like he was similar when he was in Baltimore. So a lot of credit to the Los Angeles Chargers. Again, the Cleveland Browns are just a team in just complete disarray, but you play the teams that are in front of you and they decimated them as the way that they should. And as far as the Browns, they should be in complete tank and sell mode as far as this team goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no doubt about it. I'm even taking calls on Myles Garrett at this point. If I'm the Browns, it is time to hit the detonate button. It's time to blow this thing up and completely start over. It is a complete dumpster fire in Cleveland. Alex, let's talk some college football. We had a big college football weekend. Ohio State gets a big-time win over Penn State. Look, James Franklin, he's the first person I thought of when I thought about this ball game and how it played out. Because, look, this guy's a really good coach. And I don't think anybody could argue that this guy has built a really nice thing at Penn State. He's got this program winning consistently, putting out big-time NFL draft picks, winning a lot of games year in and year out. But it has to be so frustrating if you're a Penn State fan and see them win so many games and have all this success, but they never win the big games. And it's just crazy because I watched this game and they go up 10-0 after that pick six early in the game. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, okay, Penn State here, maybe this is where they kind of get over the Ohio State hurdle and finally get that big marquee win for James Franklin. And maybe this program is, going to be right there in the mix in the Big Ten. And nope, back to reality. They only scored 3 points the rest of the game after that. Absolutely awful. Now, look, Ohio State is clearly the better team. They have more talent. Even after that early lead, look, they kept it close-ish, but there was no doubt about it who the better team was. They just can't make the plays when it matters. And at a certain point, it comes back to the coach. I mean, look at this guy's record versus top-ranked teams. It's absolutely terrible.
I paused for the moment because I was just thinking of James Franklin. His frustration boiled over a little bit. I don't know if you saw it, Brad, with James Franklin kind of yelling at one of the fans and saying, well, say it to my face and so on and so forth. But yeah, it's like he gets to the brink and gets to the edge of the cliff, and then they don't jump in order to go all in. And when they start to face some of these bigger teams, I thought this is one of the better teams that he had. And they're going to start to, they perhaps can start to slide. Now, I know they're number 6 now, and when they have Washington, Purdue, Minnesota, and Maryland the rest of the way. Now, I mean, Maryland's been up and down. They've kind of been a streaky team, and they could maybe give them a bit of a battle just because it's in division, but I don't think so. So they should win the rest of the way out, and they'll probably stay at, for the most part, I would venture to say they probably stay, I believe they're number 6 right now, but I don't think they make any noise in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's just it. Like here it is, Penn State having another, really by all means, a really nice season, a really good season, a season that most programs would kill to have. They're going to make the playoff. I think you're right, because they're going to be favored in each one of those games, and they'll probably win those games. But once they get to the playoffs, what's going to happen? And I don't see it ending any other way. And until he does something to change that narrative, that's the way it's going to be for this team. Let's stick with the Big Ten for a second, because Oregon went into the Big House and stomped Michigan. Now, look, Michigan isn't the same team this year as they were last year. We know that. But this is still a team with a lot of talent. There's still some NFL guys over there for the Michigan side, and we know that they have a big-time home field advantage at the Big House, and Oregon came in there and completely outplayed this team on every single level. This Oregon defense, I'm not sure people are talking about them enough. People are talking about Dylan Gabriel, the offense, and I get it. This defense is for real. They fly around. They are a great tackling team. They've got guys at all three levels. We know the offense is explosive. And look, they have so many weapons on offense. I mean, they've got multiple receivers, NFL-level receivers, 2 tight ends, one that I think is going to be a first-round pick, 2 running backs that are both high-level guys, a really good O-line, a top 3 quarterback in college football. The more I run down and really look at this team, Alex, this might be the most complete team in college football right now.
Yeah, I can agree to that. I still think Texas will beat them if they start Arch Manning, but we'll save that for another pod. So yeah, it was a thrashing. I know Michigan may not have the quarterback to kind of really stabilize them, but they still do have that defense. They still have a guy who's probably going to still be a top 5 pick, along with a bunch of other guys that probably can't be another first round, and then the cornerback. But they just look like they're just playing out the string and trying not to get hurt, so they can start focusing on the next level in the NFL and where they're going to be in the draft, while Oregon is soaring and trying to set themselves up for a national championship.
Yeah, because I look around, you mentioned Texas, and I look around at some of these other top teams. Look, Georgia is loaded, but I don't trust Carson Beck. I know you don't. He's talented, but he's so streaky. There's moments where he looks really sharp, and then he'll make these boneheaded picks that really cost his team. You just don't know what you're going to get from him play in and play out. Way too up and down for me. Now, Texas is great. Really good team, loaded roster. We know how much talent they have. But they've been a little underwhelming the last few weeks, and my confidence in them isn't as high as it was at the start of the season. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm with you as far as I think they could play with anybody when they're on. But the more I look around, I'm thinking, gosh, Oregon is just clicking on every level right now. And we know things can change quickly in college football, but hard not to be impressed with the number 1 team in the country right now. Now, hard to believe USC blew another lead over the weekend, Alex. Look, it's crazy how fast this program has gone off the rails with Lincoln Riley. I didn't necessarily think title contender, but I thought this was a team that could win 10 games and make some noise, and they have been on a complete free fall. I was thinking about this. They have to be the most disappointing team in all of college football right now. They have got to start winning the recruiting battles, because I think that's where this is stemming from. Look around the conference, look around the rest of the top dogs in college football. Some of the guys we mentioned, look at Oregon, look at Georgia, look at Texas, look at these other programs, look at the level they're recruiting at, look at the talent they're bringing in these last couple of years. Now go look at, 24/7 Sports, go look at Rivals, whatever you want to look at. Where's USC? Because they're not up there with those other teams. They're putting together some nice classes, but they're not putting together those level of classes, and it's starting to show on the field. Look, the Big Ten as a whole, I mean, look, we know Oregon, we know Ohio State, but this conference as a whole is loaded right now, and this team is starting to really fall behind. I don't know why they can't finish games. Do they have any elite guys, Alex? Is there any guy on this USC roster that you circle right now and say, wow, that's a first-round pick? I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't have anybody, and I'm not sure about the defense if there is a guy, but I would venture to say no. And, we spoke about this maybe a week or 2 weeks ago about the seat under Lincoln Riley and how hot it is. I thought it was just a little seat warmer, but perhaps it's a full-on fireplace at this point, because USC is a big brand. That market does put a lot of emphasis behind USC. As we know, they're not a big NFL town, so it's the Lakers, it's the Dodgers. Congratulations, but screw you guys. But USC is a huge brand, and they get a lot of national attention and attention from the city of Los Angeles. So right now, I have to go back, and Brad is absolutely right. That seat has to be scorching hot. And I did talk about them, I believe, last week in terms of what their schedule, in terms of what their rankings look like for recruits coming in. It's not very good at all.
Now, we talked about this last week, Alex. Colorado and Deion Sanders. And look, this team has overachieved in a lot of ways with 5 wins in their last 6 games. Ever since that blowout loss to Nebraska, this team has really turned it around. And look, Kansas State and Iowa State both lost on Saturday. Those were some big upset games. Great games, by the way. Definitely, I had multiple screens going. I had an iPad going. I had the TV going. It was what a Saturday. Now, we talked about this. We talked about if some dominoes fall the right way here, circle Colorado and watch out because the door might just creak open here in the Big 12. And those 2 losses is leaving the door open here for this Colorado team. And look, I'm not going to lie, Alex, I'm pulling for this team right now. I'm pulling for Coach Prime. I love Shedeur Sanders. You know how much I love this kid. He's my number 1 ranked quarterback. Travis Hunter, best player in college football. Just get this team to the playoff. How fun would it be? I know they're not going to win the whole thing, right? But how fun would it be to put them in this playoff? It would be absolutely must watch.
The catalyst for a lot of this is, and I always want to give respect, that defense has turned it around and then given that offense some stops, some key stops, and kept them in games. We talked about it. Obviously, I'm going to have to eat some crow on this one. I had them at a max of 5 wins. Obviously, they're 6-2. They were on a bye last week. They faced Texas Tech, Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State. This ultimately, and I'm not sure about the other teams. I didn't take a look at their schedules. However, this ultimately may come down to what happened a few weeks ago on October 12th at home to Kansas State in that 31-28 loss to Kansas State. Had they beat Kansas State, I think they would firmly be in the driver's seat to the Big 12 championship, as opposed to waiting to see if some other dominoes fall. Now, 2 fell, obviously, that we just spoke about, and Kansas State and Iowa State losing, but they're still going to need some help to get to that Big 12 championship to face most likely BYU. But that week, they're going to be kicking themselves, perhaps, if they don't make it. They're bowl eligible now, but if they wanted that shot at the playoffs, they're going to be looking at that game against Kansas State where they lost by 3 points, because that would have pushed them up the rankings, and that would have pushed them firmly in the driver's seat to make the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, don't remind me of that game, Alex. I was in Vegas watching that in a casino and watching my ticket burn up right in my hands here, just losing money as I watched them blow that game.
And really quick, guys, as Brad said, we were watching this Monday night game. The Kansas City Chiefs did drive down with the first possession in overtime, and it was a touchdown by Kareem Hunt, winning me 1 fantasy league while also sinking me in the other fantasy league because the other guy had Kareem Hunt. So double-edged sword, but either way, that's the way fantasy goes. But congratulations to the Chiefs. They're now 8-0.
I talked about the Lions being the best team in the league, and I still really believe that. But look, when it comes to the playoffs and it comes to big games, it's still really, really hard to bet against this Kansas City Chiefs team. They just find ways to win ball games, even when they don't look great, even when the offense has been a little shaky at times this year. Now, I think D-Hop has been a huge addition. I think he's going to continue to be a really big move for them. Kareem Hunt, how is he not in Dallas? Talk about a guy who's been an impact that they just pulled off of the clearance rack. Why didn't Dallas make that move? A team that desperately needs a running back, and here he is playing at a really high level on a championship level team. It's just crazy.
And at some point, Brad, just to wrap this up, Travis Kelce went crazy, 14 catches, 100 yards. But we're going to have to talk about Baker Mayfield and his performances, because he was playing, obviously we know the gruesome injury to Chris Godwin. Mike Evans is also out. So he's playing without his 2 big guns and playing with a bunch of 3rd and 4th stringers. And Higdon is starting to look like a premier tight end in this league. But he really truly showed up and performed in key situations to drive this team down the field against a top-notch defense to bring this team to overtime to at least have a shot to win this game.
Yeah, the demise of Travis Kelce might have been overstated. I'll point the finger at myself on that one. He's looking like he's starting to play like the guy that we've seen in years past. I don't know if he's in his prime anymore, but starting to be an impact player again. And yeah, hats off to Baker Mayfield, man. I mean, this is a guy that was basically left for dead, bounced around the league, looked like he was going to turn into a career backup. He gets a shot with Tampa Bay. He's found a home there, and he's played like a top 10 quarterback these last couple of years, and just really, really impressive stuff. I love the redemption story of a guy like Baker Mayfield. Absolutely. If you enjoy the podcast, do us a favor and subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Once again, I'm Brad Fowler. He's Alex Higdon. This is Pint Glass Football, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Pint Glass Football Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at PGF Podcast.
Zencastr is the ultimate web-based podcasting solution. It provides high-quality audio and video podcast production and hosting. With a full suite of professional tools, podcasters can seamlessly record, produce, and publish studio-quality content all from one dashboard. Zencastr's post-production process takes the headache out of audio production. Set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with a click of a button. Coordinating all your guests to record in person is painful and tedious. Easily invite up to 11 participants per recording with one click. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code PGFP, and you'll get 30% off your first 3 months of Zencastr Professional. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.